Hello everyone and welcome back to Austin Plus, where today we are talking about a specific film. Today we are talking about the Joker movie released in 2019, because when Joker was released in 2019, audiences couldn't agree on what they had just watched. Was it a comic book origin story, a psychological character study, or a commentary on mental illness, inequality in modern society? While the film allows Arthur Fleck's transformation into the Joker, its real message goes far beyond one man's descent into violence. So today we are talking about what was the Joker movie actually about, because I had a conversation with someone the other day about this film and they were like, oh, it wasn't the greatest Joker origin I've ever seen. And I think it's because it's not what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a Joker story. I think and yes, it has the wrong kind of marketing, but if you can see past that kind of marketing, you'll understand what this movie's about. So that's what I'm here to tell you today. So without further ado, let's get into it. At its core, this movie is a story about isolation. This story is this movie is not for the faint of heart. It really isn't, because at its core, Joker is the story of a man who feels completely invisible. Arthur Fleck is ignored, mocked, and dismissed by basically everyone around him, desperately wanting to be seen and accepted. But his loneliness isn't simply emotional, it becomes existential, it becomes a part of him. And the film explores what happens when a person loses everything that was once meaningful and all of those connections to society, and begins believing that they no longer matter to anyone. That is a sad, that is a gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching story to start with. Now, it's got DC wrapping paper over it. I'm going to try and utilize that in this as much as possible. However, there is a completely different interpretation of this film, if you actually look into it. The film does say, it's based on a DC character, that's it. And one thing I said there was about, society. The film has a lot to do with the impact on society and how society failed Arthur Fleck. Throughout the film, Gotham City is portrayed as a place where institutions are collapsing. Now, that is actually quite accurate to Gotham City in the comics. Public services are cut, mental health programs disappear, economic inequality grows, and ordinary people are left to fend for themselves. Arthur's decline into this isn't caused by a single event, but by a society that repeatedly overlooks the vulnerable individuals. And Joker does suggest that neglect can just be as destructive as direct cruelty, but creating conditions where desperation turns into chaos. Now, that alone, I think, is to an extent of when so this film takes place in the 1970s, and at the time, I think that's I don't know if it's accurate. I wouldn't know if you're interpreting it in Gotham City in that sense. Yes, I think we are gonna have a film soon enough called Clayface that takes place in the 90s or something, which takes place obviously in Gotham. So I think that's another good portrayal. The biggest combating debate about this film is whether it's about personal responsibility or mental illness. One of the films, I think, obviously, as I said, the most debated themes is the relationship between mental illness and personal responsibility. Arthur struggles with obviously severe psychological conditions and receives little meaningful support, yet the film stops short of presenting his violence as inevitable or justified. However, that's how it is interpreted, and I think that's such a that's at the point where he kills Murray Franklin, the person of that show host, is the part where I'm like, shit, this film has got layers. Instead, it does explore how untreated illness, trauma, and social neglect can interact with personal choices, especially in a city like Gotham. It also creates a very different story to what we're used to for a character like the Joker. It created a tragedy that is both understandable and deeply disturbing without excusing the harm that follows. Now, obviously that does change in the second movie. The second movie I don't think was necessary, because most of it takes place in his mind. But you can also understand those different aspects of his mind. And I think there's a thing there saying his violence was inevitable or justified. It was inevitable. It's not justified. It's definitely it's a really weird psychological film. That's why when I went into this, I was like, oh, it's a Joker film. It's about the Batman's greatest enemy. The fuck it ain't. This film does also have a core theme of searching for one's identity, which is Arthur, and Arthur spends much of the film trying to become someone others actually will appreciate. A successful comedian, a caring son, or simply a person who belongs. He doesn't know which one. But as those identities actually fall apart, he creates a new one. The Joker, which ironically receives more attention and recognition as a criminal than he ever did as Arthur Fleck, which probably has a backfire on society rather than anything. But the film questions whether identity is something we discover within ourselves or something shaped by how society chooses to see us. Now that was actually, I think, a quote from the film when, or quote from the director, or something like that, because I think Arthur Fleck's version of the Joker is not the Joker that we know, but he kind of develops into the second film. So if you want that comic accuracy, somewhat you can lean into the second film, but in terms of like the psychological conditioning and the psychological cost of a character, if you want to set up a great Gotham, a Batman story, I think Arthur Fleck was great. Now, if anyone actually knows, I did do a video the other day, a month ago or something, like what if the Joker, Arthur Fleck, was a part of the Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman franchise. I think they would be two peas in a pod in that sort of franchise, because we don't know much about Barry Keoghan's thing. I think that one's more justified and more psychological than this is. I think the biggest symbol for this film is chaos. I think the big symbol of Joker is chaos, but they utilize that and progress it, because by the end of the film, Joker becomes far more than one individual. His actions unintentionally inspire a movement among Gotham's frustrated and marginalized citizens, which does transform him into a symbol of rebellion rather than obviously a simple murderer. He creates a cult following. Importantly, Arthur does also never set out to lead to be a revelation or like a leader. He is just there. He's the icon, suggesting that the social unrest often does grow from the widespread frustration rather than the charismatic leader, because that's not what he was trying to be. He was just trying to be seen. Now, the Joker does become the face of society, already on the verge of collapsing, and he becomes the face of Gotham. Now, the second film is all about trying to justify him in court. Now, that, I think, is cool, but they should have spent more time in that. They're trying to justify his character development from what he became and from what he does, and they obviously bring characters back from the first film. However, it didn't need a sequel. You could have probably put that into a 3-hour film that I do still think people could watch. However, Joker in the DC universe is, unfortunately, it is an unreliable perspective, because Joker constantly blurs the line between reality and imagination. Arthur does obviously imagine relationships, fantasies, and moments of success that never actually happen, which does leave audiences questioning how much of the film can be trusted. And I do think that unreliable aspect, I think, doesn't really link to the Joker that we know in the DC comics. Now, yes, I know I keep on comparing this to the Joker, because at the end of the day, it is a DC character that we all know and love. Joker is probably one of the most popular villains in the DC comics, so I think having a film of this capacity and understanding its depth, I think is very important, but also showing why I don't think it's a accurate understanding of the DC. I'm not saying I hate it, I'm just pointing it out. But this unreliable aspect reinforces one of the movie's central ideas: the perception shapes reality, making it difficult to separate objective truth from Arthur's increasingly fractured state of mind. But that theme, I think, is very coinciding with Joker's character, because he has got a fractured mind. Now, the film did resonate with people. It still resonates with me to this day. It's a great, it's a great philosophical film to me. I think if you've watched it as many times as I have, which says a fair bit about me, if you take away that aspect of like its Joker, you, after watching it so many times, you forget that it is a DC character. It is its own story, and that's why I think it did so well, because the film resonated with so many people because it used familiar comic book character to explore universal like issues such as loneliness, economic inequality, mental health, and the human desire for recognition. While viewers were interpreted it as a message in many different ways, like me, hence this video, the film sparked widespread discussion precisely because it avoided simple answers, like he dropped into the vat of acid, like the typical Joker story. But rather than telling audiences what to think, it presented an uncomfortable questioning, table about modern society and left those questions unresolved. And that's why people resonated, because it's for the viewer's interpretation. It is how they perceive it. They perceive it as the proper Joker, fair enough. If you do not perceive it as a Joker or DC film at all, there you go. But that's why I think this film is so well developed and so well, I don't know how they did it. That's why I made this video. I don't know how they made a DC character such a, as I said, they went on universal themes, and then once you've watched it, say more than once, I'd say if you watch it twice, you forget that it's Joker from the DC comics. It's so well crafted, and I stand by that. But more than anything, it was a story about what can happen when isolation, neglect, and personal tragedy do collide. It isn't a celebration of violence or a simple villain origin story. It is a character study that asks difficult questions about society, identity, and responsibility. But whether you see Arthur Fleck as a victim, a villain, or both, Joker ultimately forces us to confront the uncomfortable consequences of a world that stops seeing people before they actually stop seeing themselves. And that is the Joker film. There you go. Go and watch it if you haven't already. But without further ado, that's the end of today's video. That was a long video. That was a long-winded one. But I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And comment what you would like to see on the channel. And comment what you think your interpretation of the Joker film is if you have seen it. And Joker's 2. So yeah. But I hope you have an amazing day as always. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye, lads.